All right, so we've gotten a lot of questions from patrons and from community members over the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to sit down with Stephen and answer some of those questions with him. First question comes from Lars Larson. So this is actually a question he had asked before, but I think we didn't understand that it was about the Seeker that he was asking it. And he asked, will there be gear that changes wizards' stats like mana, HP, jump height, fall speed, and so on in the Seeker?
Maybe. In general, I want to try to make most sort of changes to the game happen through spells rather than picking up gear. But what very well might happen, I'm totally fine with this, is that you pick up some kind of rune or spell that when you cast it, it gives you the gear, like changes your cloak. That's actually something that's coming up. We're going to try to have spells that change the look and feel of the character that you're playing.
That'll be really fun.
So there's no reason it couldn't stick a helmet on you or change your staff or change your cloak, and then that results in the change in jump height or some other character stat. So that for sure, yeah. But it's a game about spellcrafting, so I want at least the beginning of any sort of change or thing you get in the world to be pick up some kind of rune.
The next one is from Epic Inn. I see there's a new code system. Will I still be able to do crazy spells like summon an orb on my staff and stick it on a creature and have it explode?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so, that's a cool example. Let me give you a lame example just to illustrate that we really are making a system where you can very deeply change the game. Last week, we very quietly pushed out a change to all of the currently downloadable tech demos, and it changed the done button. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a big, ugly gray done button, yep. And now it's a sleek, nice,
it's much nicer.
Green done button. Now that's not the impressive thing. What's going on behind the scenes there is what we actually did is we took that done button, which was written in Unreal, and we got rid of it, and we created one that was written in the overlay, the web page that's overlaid on top of Unreal. That's also not the cool thing yet. But the interesting thing is that when you click that done button, you're actually interacting with the web page. So how does it close the web page inside of Unreal? Well, it sends over JavaScript code that finds the web page and closes it at runtime. So that's an example. I know it's not a spell, but it's an example of us shipping over code to make a deep change in the game. So absolutely, you can send over code that gets access to the staff entity that's in your hand, yep. Sticks an orb on it, puts a creature on top, whatever. I mean, you have access to the Unreal runtime via Unreal.js, via spells, or mods, or whatever you want. We're using that ability actively to develop the game, so of course it's exposed for people to do, how is it phrased, crazy stuff.
Yeah,
crazy
you're going to be
spells.
able to do all sorts of crazy stuff. That is really the goal with code spells, is make as many crazy spells as we can.
Totally, yeah.
So I have a couple questions from Rose of Camor. The first one is, are there any perks for having bought the Steam version all those years ago?
Not now, but I want something
there to
like
be
that.
A perk.
So
yeah.
this goes into something we've been talking about a lot, which is how do we kind of thank the people who have helped us in various ways, like backing us on Kickstarter, buying the old game, funding us on Patreon, even just participating in the Discord. Our community is growing, and everyone seems very nice, but there are certain people who stand out, they really have helped us a lot over the years, and wouldn't be able to do it without them. And I'm sure there will be people in the future who kind of rise to that sort of status. So, I don't know, giving people some kind of perks or ability to influence the design process more than others. These are the kinds of things we're thinking about, but we don't have a clear answer to it yet.
We're brainstorming.
We're figuring
it
out. Yeah, so quite likely there'll be some kind of perk. Perk is a good word for it. I don't know what it's going to be, but
if people have ideas, definitely share them. Next question from Rose of Camor was, if the new version is open source, will it be posted to codespells.org when complete?
We should put links on there, but I will say it's open source now.
Yeah.
It's not like there are a few things that I can't release just because I purchased them on the Unreal Asset Store. But I'm trying to make everything else that I haven't specifically purchased. Anything I write, it's already open source. It's already on it's on my GitHub, or it's on Lindsay's GitHub. However, there are a lot of repos now. I feel like
it is confusing.
we're up to probably 10 or more repos because we got a repo. We got repos for some of the underlying things, but then every mod,
every rune collection, every mod, every world has a repo.
Yeah,
so it's a lot of repos.
So we probably actually ought to organize that on a page on our website. It's a pretty good idea.
Yeah, and that would be a pretty easy project too. Okay, the next one from Rose of Camor is, am I correct in my understanding that all the downloads on the website are demos for how the Codespells authoring tools are coming along?
Yeah, basically, right. So we're always going to try to keep that page up to date with like the coolest stuff we can currently do with our tools. And
every week we're releasing more things, and it's getting cooler every week, which is exciting.
Yeah, totally. You can think of them as demos of what is currently possible, and you can sort of look at them as like hints as to where we're going, and what we can do, what the community can do. Mm-hmm. And every one of those is a starting point for somebody else's world, because they're moddable things in and of themselves. So if you really like, let's say, the voxel world, or the forest world, or the cave world, or something like that, and you want to kind of put your own like little mini game onto that, or your own storyline onto that, like ideally you would be able to do that. And probably you could, theoretically, you could start doing it now. It's just not well documented. You'd have to look at my code and see how it
would be tricky right now.
Yeah, but it's not impossible. Like, it's there. Like, you could download one of those things and start hacking on it if you were determined enough.
The last one from Rose of Camor is, finally, what was the last X% complete update for the tools and canon world? My guess is she's asking, how far along? Oh, I'm just assuming Rose of Camor is a girl, but it very well might be, so I totally apologize if it isn't. But I think what they are asking is, how complete are the tools, and how complete are the worlds that we have released so far? So, what percentage complete? If that isn't your question, you should definitely ask it again, and we can answer better in a future question submission.
That's hard. It's hard to answer. So the tools, the percentage complete of the tech demos, as tech demos, they're 100% complete. We'll be making cooler things that are not those, but and with those worlds, we'll probably release other downloads that you can do other things with.
I think the tricky thing here is Codespells feels like the sort of project where we could just keep adding updates, and we can keep adding new content, and we can keep adding new features and things that you can modify with spells, or things about spells you can modify. So
actually, that's a perfect. So let me building on that. Let me. I think the best metaphor here is think of Codespells as an ecosystem that's very, very similar to any programming language ecosystem that you've come across. And I'll just arbitrarily pick the JavaScript ecosystem. So it's like you ask, how complete is the JavaScript ecosystem? I have no idea. It's completely open-ended. In theory, there are an infinite number of JavaScript libraries and packages and programs that we as the human race can put together in JavaScript, and so it's an ever-growing thing. And so we envision Codespells as being that kind of ever-growing ecosystem that it just has cooler and cooler stuff over time. So the ecosystem, I would say, you can't say what percentage complete something is unless it's bounded. So this being infinite, we can't say. But probably at some point we could get to the point where we have a certain set of it's clear enough to us what we're going to accomplish over the next few months, and then we could say what percentage complete those objectives are. But even that wouldn't be that a long-term big picture percent complete. But yeah, it goes back into something we've been talking about a lot, which is I think we're figuring out the technology's ins and outs well enough that we can put together some timelines. So maybe that would help clarify things.
I think putting together a timeline would help a lot of people kind of envision where we're going and how far we are until we get there.
Yeah, so let's defer that question for now, but it's a good one.
Yeah, thank you. We'll start working on a timeline. The next one's from Angalore. Does Steven plan on writing a simple step-by-step tutorial on how to implement Codespells in Unreal?
Yes. Yeah. So the only so there, I guess there's a couple of things. I'm not sure how to implement Codespells in Unreal, but there's a couple of things that could mean. Could mean that you're using Unreal to make some kind of content that can be modded into a Codespells world. So we do this fairly frequently in developments. Look at one of the rune collections, like fire particles, and we made all those fire particles in Unreal. and then released it as a rune collection. And now in any Codespells world that has the fire particles installed, you can load those things in. And there are some tutorials out for doing that, and I've released a couple of videos about doing that. So like making mods, already tutorials. I could probably make them better, but as of yet, I haven't gotten any confirmation that anyone cares, so I haven't. But yeah, I mean, we have some internal docs that we use when we're doing stuff like that. So that process is relatively straightforward. The other thing I think it could mean, which is less straightforward, is using Unreal to create new Codespells worlds. Like if you, I don't know, created your own cool terrain with some trees on it, and you're like, I want this to be a Codespells world. That, currently, what we do is we do that process, and then we put in a Codespells plugin, and that's what I mentioned earlier. Has stuff in it that I purchased off the marketplace. So I can't just release the source code to anyone. So you can't necessarily do it the way that we're doing it. However, there's not a tutorial about this, but what I think is possible is for you to take that world and package it up as content in a mod. So you would start in one world that's already there, that we've already created, and then cast a spell that takes you to your other world. So I think we can still get to the point where people in the community are creating their own worlds, but I don't have to actually open source stuff that I shouldn't open source.
Okay.
But just you kind of like bootstrap up from a packaged Codespells thing that we created with that sort of like internal plugin. Yeah.
And Angler's question actually reminded me of a goal that we have of having like a page on our website that has kind of tutorials and things that help orient brand new community members to how to craft spells, how to like create new mods, how to do these kinds of basic things that we think most community members will want to do in the future.
Totally.
So that is a goal that we have. It's probably not that far off on the timeline, like, I don't know, maybe within the next couple months. And I just wanted to thank Angalore for helping us manage the forums, specifically manage the Discord over the last couple of weeks. It's been really helpful having you around.
Yeah,
and I know Stephen and I are super thankful, and Kitty is super thankful to Angalore for helping us with Discord. You're awesome. Okay, next question comes from Mika. Will Codespells the Seeker have some sort of restrictions so that you can't make a ridiculously infinite program? Like where the PC can't handle the spell that you crafted.
Okay, so this question goes back to the earliest days of Codespells. Like, I mean, we talk about it today in this prototype. We talked about it in the prototype that's on Steam. Talked about it at length in grad school, and talked about it back in college. It's like, it's this tantalizingly like obvious thing. It's like, well, you don't want someone to break the game, right? Like it does make sense. You want to prevent that if you can. But turns out, like, you start to touch on this, like, nerve that's at the core of theoretical computer science. Like, we're getting really very close to what's called the halting problem. And some of you out there probably heard about it. This is a famous problem in computer science where I'll tell you the story very briefly, that once upon a time, there was a day when people said, we have programs, and programs can look at other programs. I wonder if I could write a program that will tell me if this other program will run infinitely. So people didn't know the answers. We were like, I wonder if it could. And just to skip to the end, it was proven that you can't. You can't always do it. You can't write one Uber program that can tell if any other program will halt. Ooh, maybe sometime we can do the proof. I don't know. It would be really fun to do the proof, but I won't bore you with the proof right now. But so it's not possible. And in fact, it's also very, like, as an extension of the halting problem, it's very hard to have any program that can sort of prove some arbitrary or interesting property about all other programs. So it's hard to like look at your spell and have some Codespells process that's like, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
So what that leaves as an option is to look at it while it's running and be like, okay, it's running in this sort of sandbox thing. It's used too much CPU. Kill it. You know, it's kind of like stuff that your operating system might do. And those things are very easy to do in Racket. Actually, Racket has a great sandboxing sort of like framework for code. But the problem is, a lot of the code doesn't run in Racket. It ships JavaScript over to Unreal right now, and then it's a mess, right? It's like inside of the JavaScript stuff inside of Unreal. It's hard to get a single sandbox around it. In fact, there's only one JavaScript event loop running anyway, so it gets really tricky. So I would like to. I'd like to be able to do it, but it's a very tricky problem. And I'm inclined to say that if we do it, it's certainly not going to be the first thing we do. We will definitely ship games where it's possible for you to write spells that crash your game. That's going to happen. It's already happened.
Right now,
you can do it now.
Yeah.
In fact, we
did it the other day. It was great.
Yeah. So the other day we made a spell where it creates a trigger zone. This only took like 3 runes.
Yeah,
I think,
3 runes, and we were breaking the game.
3. So you create a trigger zone that when you enter it, it creates a spawner of apples, right? And so you think about what that does, is you trigger it, now there's a spawner of apples, and now every time an apple gets spawned,
it triggers
another spawner of apples, which is now spawning 2 apples, and then that makes 2 more spawners of apples. Yeah. So we called it Apple Apocalypse, and it crashes the game fast. It's like, you see apples, it freezes, and then tries one more iteration to make a bunch more apples, and then it's gone. So you can definitely crash the game. And there's not a lot I can do about it right now, because I don't want to spend months trying to like build this like framework to make it safe, and then make no progress towards cool spells, which I know is what everyone really wants.
I feel like people won't be as bothered by like accidentally breaking the game than they would be by not having cool things to make.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. I feel like the cool stuff is what makes code spells unique and special. And
so I know we live in a world where most software keeps you safe. Right, most of it, except programming languages. That's the one exception, right? If you download JavaScript doesn't keep you from writing infinite loops. In fact, it encourages it. You're supposed to. Like, sometimes you want infinite stuff, and you want things that can crash. But most software that's not programming languages, it does keep you safe.
Yeah.
CodeSpells is a programming language, though, and so I know it's at this weird intersection where it's a game, and games usually would keep you safe, keep you from breaking it, but it's also a programmable game. So maybe it shouldn't. It's in a weird gray area. But anyway, to answer the question, you're going to be able to break the game for a significant amount of time. We might release some work in the future that's like got more like safety, like training wheels on it. Maybe. But that's only if like we get to a point where like, man, there's so much cool stuff in this ecosystem and everyone loves everything. What we really need is to make a really nice sandbox that you can't break.
Oh, so Torsh had, I think Torsh had this question, or at least he was kind of broaching this question. Will we be able to spawn creatures in code spells?
Yeah. In fact, like, that would be a fantastic mod for someone to write now.
Yeah.
So you can spawn fire particles, you can spawn a box, you can spawn rocks. All of these are they're all the same in kind of at a certain level of abstraction. They're just spawning blueprints that are made in Unreal. So if you make a creature in Unreal with behaviors and, pathfinding, whatever, it's all a blueprint, you can spawn that with a spell, and it should work. I haven't done it yet, but it's definitely on our like next few month roadmap to make like kind of like some sort of animated thing you can spawn with runes. So we'll be doing it soon. But that should be theoretically, technologically feasible now.
The next one's from Habad 360. What's going to happen to the old game? Is the code going to be open sourced or something else?
Kind of think of the old game as having a certain level of development that's been put into it right now. So it's got a level of polish.
Yeah.
And we're building something else right now that's approaching that level of polish, be it via a different route, because we're kind of building more of a platform ecosystem thing. But, it's getting there. At some point, it'll overtake it, and we'll have worlds that are more interesting than the old ones. And at that tipping point, what we'll probably do is swap out what's on Steam right now for a more interesting thing. We'll keep the other one there, maybe embedded inside it or something, so you can still get to it. Just because it's a part of part of CodeSpell's history, right?
Yeah.
So it's never going to go away in terms of being unaccessible.
Yeah.
So that's I'm answering what's going to happen to the old game in terms of software. But the other question was what's going to happen in terms of the code. And I assume that just gets open source. I don't see any reason not to open source that.
Right, I don't either.
My hesitation is people might inundate me with questions about it that I don't want to answer, because, I don't...
I mean, maybe we open source it and just say, don't ask Steven about this, he won't answer
questions. All right, there you go,
Maybe that's just on a repo.
Yeah, something like that.
This is not This is not the current version of code spells.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's the word for that? Where like it's just not being developed anymore.
It's like legacy.
It's a legacy code thing.
It's there for reference material only.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's some really neat stuff in there. Like, man, like Adrian did just super cool stuff with like the water physics. You know, that code is in there.
It's deprecated. That's
deprecated.
It's deprecated, and we're not working on it anymore. But it's you're right. It's a part of the history, and it would be nice for it to still be accessible to people. Yeah. Okay, final question from Broadster 102808. Is there multiplayer?
Oh, is there now? No.
Not
but
yet.
Are there plans to make multiplayer? Definitely. Yeah, this is another question that goes back to the dawn of code spells. Is like,
how do we make multiplayer?
Yeah, it's just like it's cool to write spells, but man, it is way cooler to do it with other people. And I think I've said this on my blog, but code spells started as a game of Gnomic, right? Mm-hmm. Which is just a talking game. So it's no computer, no materials at all. But it's multiplayer. Exactly. Mm-hmm. You go around the circle and you make new rules for the game. And you can make any rules. You could say, all right, from now on, we will use a deck of cards. And if everyone votes, like, yes, we will use a deck of cards, then the deck of cards is in play. Like, you've modded the game from within the game. And you could use that structure to go anywhere you want. I mean, you could build card games. You could say that we're all going to go play a game of StarCraft 2 or whatever. You know, I mean, like, as long as everyone agrees on the installation of a new rule, it happens. And it's just... like, it's fun because it's multiplayer. And so code spells is always this thing where it's really hard to make, like, a moddable game where you can, like, write spells inside the game. But once that starts to get off the ground, the next thing is like, well, how do we do this in a way that's really cool and fun with other people? So, I want to do that. And I feel like this is, like, the tagline, the unofficial tagline of code spells. Remember, code spells is not one thing. So, will code spells be multiplayer? There will be a multiplayer thing in the code spells ecosystem. Yes, definitely. Will all things in the code spells ecosystem be multiplayer? Definitely not. There are going to be some things that are single player, but I definitely want some things that are multiplayer.
Definitely. And I think there are a lot of community members who are really excited about multiplayer, and since there's so many people excited about it, like we really have to like build some multiplayer stuff.
Yeah, and it's just going to be such a cool moment. Like there's some people in the like code spells community that just have been there for years, and they're really excited about the project, and obviously that's the thing that keeps us excited about the project. And it's just going to be so cool to like be in multiplayer together for the first time.
Right?
Technically the second time. We had a kind of a multiplayer like prototype that sort of worked sometimes in the old game, and honestly, like that was our moment before where we reached too high and we made this multiplayer thing, and then we spent so much time trying to get multiplayer working smoothly, and we're like, the water physics, it doesn't quite work, and so we spent cycles trying to get that to work, and just sort of debugging that stuff and getting the matchmaking to work. Like it was tricky. So we're not gonna like make the mistake of like reaching for that too soon. But I think like a small, very self-contained world that has a few things that work well. Yeah, that will happen soon. I think.
Yeah, it's definitely on the timeline for the next couple months, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for sitting down. I know it's busy around the holidays.
Yeah, I'm excited.
As we're all stuck at home.
But yeah, as always, thank you to everyone who's supporting us on Patreon. We definitely could not be doing this without you.